Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the next session in our Bridging the Divide series, our 2023 educational series about all things end of life. Really excited to have you tonight. I want to do a quick shout out to my college friend from Florida, Chrissy. Thanks for joining us. Many of you I know have been with us before, but for those of you who haven't, just a little bit of background on our organization. Our vision is to transform the end of life into the final act of living well, whatever that means for each individual. But the way we try to go about that, we come at it from three different ways. One is providing financial assistance to hospice patients of limited means to meet basic needs. Another way is through exactly what we're doing tonight, educating community members about end-of-life issues. And we're really excited to have McKenna Reinhard with us talking about what death doulas do and don't doula. I love that title there, McKenna. And then the third way we go about that is also through education, but it's a newer resource that we spent last year creating called the Crosswalk. And if you, Jen, could you shoot to the next slide? Thanks. If you haven't had a chance to go onto our website yet, we would love you to walk through the Crosswalk and tell us what works well, what's missing. Basically what it is we just kind of brought together a bunch of resources so that when people are facing serious illness or anything along the journey to end of life, could be about caregiving, could be about bereavement, could be about what questions to ask your doctor when you're given a serious illness. We just tried to bring that all together so you didn't have to go searching all over the place. But we know that since it's a brand new product that there are going to be gaps in there, and we'd love for you to tell us from your perspective what would be helpful. With that, I am going to turn it over to our Director of Community Engagement, David Fife. David.
Sorry about that. He can unmute now.
Jennifer finally got tired of listening to me and she wouldn't let me unmute. She's been waiting to do that for like 2 years, I think, at this point. Howdy, everybody. I'm so glad that you could be with us tonight for our session. This came out of discussions that you all have been having with us, I think, for a couple years now at this point. People wanted to learn more and more about who death doulas are. And so we heard you, and the committee who plans this series each year heard you. And we're just so delighted to be able to offer this session tonight. And so we hope that your questions get answered and that we're able to offer some valuable information. Go on to the next slide. And the whole reason we're able to bring this series to you this year is because of our amazing sponsors, our foundation level sponsors with Pima Council on Aging and Right at Home in home care and assistance. They have been amazing partners with Roots and Roads right along, and their support has enabled us to bring topics like this to the community. And also, please know that we are very grateful for the individual donations that community members offer each week and each month during these sessions. If you are able to and feel so moved, we would encourage you to just take some time, go on to our website. I think Jennifer can put into the chat the link where you can donate easily, but we really appreciate all of that support, and especially to our sponsors this year. Thanks so much. So now we get to turn things over to McKenna. You can see her bio there in front of you. I'm not going to go over it myself right now, but Roots and Roads have been able to collaborate with McKenna on different projects in the community. And one of the things that has become clear to us is that McKenna has a gift for creating brave spaces for people to talk about challenging topics. She has skills in that area that comes out not only in her work on a daily basis, but also, I'm sure, with her work as a death doula. And you can see in her bio that she's very focused on normalizing conversations about life, death, and grief, and strives to make these topics more accessible. And so we're so grateful, McKenna, that you can be with us tonight. And we're going to turn things over to you now.
Awesome. Thank you. And I must be favored because I was able to unmute myself. So thank you everyone for having me here tonight. And let me go ahead and share my screen so we can get into it. Okay. Adjust some stuff. Okay. Hopefully you all are able to see that. And Julie, thank you for liking the title. I would love to take responsibility for that, but I actually outsourced it to my family because I don't do well with naming things. So this was a family creation. But tonight we're going to go over some death doula basics, starting with a video from the person who created the training program that I did my first one at, Going with Grace. And her name is Elua Arthur. And this is about an 8-minute video talking about kind of what death doulas do and looking at her day with some clients, just to provide some insight before we get into more details.
Today, we're going to talk about death, and it might be uncomfortable and it might be hard, but I promise we're also probably going to have a lot of fun. I feel most alive when I am talking to people about their death. Their options, the two major ones that exist, are burial and cremation. I sincerely hope I'm starting to destigmatize that conversation. As they're currently buried, the body doesn't decompose in a natural way. It turns into sludge. Talking about sex won't make you pregnant. Talking about death won't make you dead. My name is Elua Arthur, and I'm a death doula. A death doula is somebody who helps a person who's dying plan for their death and supports the family through the death. A lot of people think that my work is doom and gloom, but in fact, it's the most invigorating and life-affirming thing that I know how to do. I love life, and that's why I am drawn to working in death. I was hired by a family in Colorado to discuss what an end-of-life plan would look like because her mom has cancer. Planning for death looks like a lot of things. Getting an advanced care directive together, creating a very clear death plan about how you want to die, and it looks like getting arrangements for funeral or disposition of the body. Come on in, come on in. Hello. Hi.
My name is Debbie. I'm feeling a little melancholy because I have cancer, and we actually started talking about this when I was in the hospital. The fact that I don't have a will, and you don't think about stuff like this until you are having to think about it.
My hope is to honor your wishes as fully as possible. Whatever feels right for you, we'll do.
Okay.
Okay. So this is your advanced planning document. So by the time this is complete, it will be a legally binding document. It should have all the things that your family members will need to handle your affairs in case of serious illness when you're not able to anymore or after your death. What are your general thoughts on life support treatment?
The only experience I've ever had was with my mom. I don't know, what do you guys think?
It comes down to what you would want if you were in that situation.
I don't want to be one of those people that is in a coma for 2 years.
Right. Would you want machines to support if there was a chance you could get better?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't want my family to suffer.
Okay.
That's the thing. I do not want my life to be prolonged if the likely risks would outweigh the expected benefit.
Okay. From working in death, I've learned that life is so precious, and even the pain is as pleasant as the joy.
Man, I've seen so much joy.
What would you say has been the greatest source of joy in your life?
These two. It is amazing for me to wake up in the morning and my grandson comes in and bothers me. I never could have imagined that my life would have this kind of happiness, this kind of joy. There's always going to be worry. This illness, it has really taught me whatever my life is going through, wherever I end, it's about today. If this illness takes me, you will be able to tell them that I was the happiest person today that you've ever seen.
Your joy is palpable. I can feel it. It's like, it's seeping over into me. The biggest misconception about my job is that it's sad and heavy, and I always think, well, come try it for a day. We end up laughing a lot during my end-of-life planning consultations, and even when people are getting closer to the end of their lives, there's still plenty of life in it, and there's still plenty of light. Right here at mental and emotional pain, when I am mentally or emotionally unwell, I prefer to remedy it through therapist.
Marijuana.
Or some marijuana. Yeah.
I can see that now.
I encourage you to reach out to me if you need support on any level. This is what I do, and it is my joy to do so.
Can I just ask you, what made you go this direction?
I'm not comfortable with other humans suffering if there's something I can do about it. We suffer alone a lot, and I don't think that we have to suffer alone.
I definitely understand it, so thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful.
I find it tremendously important that we can be with death in a way that's okay. It's so human. It's the most human thing we'll do other than being born and maybe giving birth. We're born, we die. Let's do both in ways that honor us and honor humankind and honor each other. This is my memento mori, the reminder that I'm gonna die, that beneath all the rest of this is just the skull. My brother-in-law was diagnosed with Burkitt's lymphoma and was terminal. After Peter died, I learned that a large part of what I'd done during the time of his illness was midwife. By being present with medication and offering support to my sister and his parents. These are things that people do anyway when somebody's ill. I was there for 2 months, though. It's a strange thing to think of, to be like happy there when somebody died, but it gave me insight into how we really can do better and we really should do better. Death meditation is an opportunity for people that are struggling with some fears around death and dying to confront those fears head on and to see what the discomfort is so that we can then talk about that and process that. Now bring your awareness and your attention to your breath. Death is inevitable. My lifespan is ever decreasing. Death comes whether or not I am prepared. Death has many causes. My body is fragile and my loved ones cannot save. My own body cannot help me when death comes. Consider these truths deeply. Take a deep breath in. There's a feeling of utter weightlessness. You are now aware that this is what dying feels like. See that all that is left of your body is a skeleton. On your next inhale in, feel that you are alive and awake and present in this room. You can open your eyes. Just stay there for a second. You feel the ground beneath your feet?
It doesn't look like my feet for some reason.
What are you feeling? What are you sensing?
My skin feels a little sensitive. I think I'm just hyper aware of all of those things right now. When you were describing my body decomposing, that was actually really comforting to me. The thought of me going back into the earth and actually nourishing the earth was really soothing.
I got this after my sister's fish died and I had to dispose of its body. My funeral, what I'd really like is to be outside, somewhere in a park. I'd like my body to be there in my orange raw silk shroud. My funeral is gonna be decorated by my jewelry. People will get to take what they want and hopefully put it on at the ceremony. I'm energized to talk about my own funeral because I think that it's a great way to celebrate who I am. The chance that the people that I love most will come together and talk about my impact on them feels incredible. I love everything about life. I love sparkles, I love giggles, I love sprinting, I love crying, I love expression. I do this because everything is rooted in love. This is the purest expression of love that I can find. This is my gift to the world. One day you and I will die, but before that day comes, let us live. Let us live, let us live. Today, we're
Hopefully you guys find Alua as amazing as I do. She's just a wonderful person, but that is kind of an overview of some stuff that a doula does, but it didn't really provide a definition or go into detail about really what is a death doula. And a death doula, you might hear them also called an end-of-life doula. She called herself a death midwife at one point. I've seen people call themselves death companions, transition guides, end-of-life coaches. There's a lot of names they might go by, but all of those titles are the same pretty much. And those are all titles for a non-medical provider who provides support for individuals and their loved ones around death, whether it's preparing for the end of life or as they're actively experiencing the end of life. And even though a lot of us might not have heard of it before COVID, because that's really when there was a huge surge in people going through training programs, it's not a new profession. In that video, they had a screen talking about how the word doula comes from the ancient Greek. So the real difference is not that this is something new, but that it's shifted from a part of a community that was just always there. Someone in the community, would be a birth doula and someone would be a death doula, or a couple people would, and you would just help with those transitions. And now it's taken on more of a profession where there's training. It's not necessarily someone within your community, but it's not new. The work itself is centuries old and can be seen in multiple cultures. So, the stuff we're learning about it is new to us, but not new to the world. And death doulas, even though all of the titles, have to do with death or end of life, they don't only work with people who are actively dying. A lot of people who work with death doulas choose to do so proactively, to prepare for their death, to get more comfortable with death and conversations around it. But then you do have the people who have gotten a serious diagnosis or are at the end of their life who are choosing to work with the death doula. So you see all the spectrum when you're looking at clients for death doulas. When you're looking at training, because we've talked about this in terms of it being a profession, there isn't a set requirement right now in the United States, I'm not sure about other countries, for someone to go through a specific program or any kind of training before they call themselves a death doula. Despite that, a lot of people, and most of the doulas I know, have chosen to go through some kind of training program or mentorship. And these programs might be in person, they might be online, they might be hybrid. There's lots of options out there. Again, with COVID, there was a huge explosion in the number of training programs and mentorships that became available. So you can kind of find one that'll fit your needs, about being online or in person or hybrid. Some people choose not to do like a formal program, like going with Grace like I did, but they might do, hospice volunteering and learn about end of life that way, or they learn through practical experience at related jobs, like being a social worker for a hospice. Any of these things can count as training and experience before calling yourself a death doula, because it's all unregulated. The thing about being unregulated is that there's no governing body. So even if you have two doulas who did take a training program, the training might not have covered the same topics because there's no set standard around what needs to be covered, or how to determine if someone is ready or if this meets criteria as a good training program. There's pluses and minuses to it being unregulated right now. Of course, if you had some governing around, what topics do they have to cover? You would have people coming out of programs all knowing the same baseline education. But as soon as you start with governance, and requiring education, you also push out people who might not be able to afford that education. And typically those people are the ones coming from underserved populations who would then go back to serve those populations. So it could further cause inequities in end-of-life care. So we think that, creating standardized training programs is a good thing, and it does have benefits, but it's not without potential drawbacks. For those who do a training program, it's hard to say what exactly would be covered because, again, there's no standardization. So programs can cover any wide variety of things. In general, there are some topics that most programs will try to cover because these are things that most death doulas will be asked about or asked to do. And that is things like creating a comprehensive end-of-life plan and helping people with advanced care directives. How to work in conjunction with a medical team because you are non-medical, but your client might be on hospice. So how do you work in conjunction with them without stepping on toes or overstepping your boundaries? Medical signifiers of death, because people will ask you, do I need to be worried about that breathing? Are they in pain? And having some knowledge, even though you're non-medical, can help you provide support to loved ones throughout the process. Solving practical and bureaucratic needs at the end of life, like disposition of possessions, or how do I file for a death certificate, or, how do I let the Social Security office know about this? Anything like that. They go over kind of basics of that. And then how to be with dying. So it's actually very common for doula training programs to have you do your own death meditation or write your own eulogy or any number of things that will make you comfortable with talking about your death and just death in general. People might also do a mentorship, and a lot of times they'll cover the same topics, but there are some that are structured to only cover what comes up with the clients that they're seeing during that mentorship. So, if you don't have someone who actually dies, you might never learn about how to help someone get a death certificate. Those are less common. Usually you see your clients and you have assigned readings and homework and things in a mentorship, but just something to keep in mind if you're asking a doula about what, if any, training they've had is, oh, you did a mentorship. Can you explain more about that and try and dig in? Some of these programs, both mentorships and formal training programs, might include additional information on alternative, I'm putting those in quotes because they're only alternatives to Western medicine, but so things like breath work and meditation and herbalism. So they might include courses on those, but that's not as common in every program. It's usually like an add-on or something specific to that training program, but not across all death doula trainings. So just like there's no set requirement around education for death doulas, there isn't a set requirement around licensure or certification. And licensure means that someone is given permission to legally practice or work in a profession, and it's tied to legislation that's usually state by state. Whereas certification generally means that you've completed a program and have been given a certificate of completion. But again, neither of those things are required to work as a death doula. So there is no national, regional, state board overseeing death doulas and standards of practice, the way that there are for therapists and doctors and things. So anyone can call themselves a death doula regardless of what, if any, training they've had. And this can seem really alarming. Like I'm telling you, any Joe Schmo off the street can say, hey, I'm a death doula, let me help you. And you do need to, ask questions probably if you're looking to hire one. But many professions, including, dentists and doctors, have started off this way. Before it became a popular profession and before the need for regulation was realized, it's very common for, there to not be standardized education requirements or standardized licensure or governing bodies. So a lot of people think that right now, death doulas are just in the beginning stages of being seen as a profession that people are interested in and taking seriously. And probably sooner than later, there will be some oversight, either saying you have to do a program and get a certificate of completion, or maybe someone will come up with a license. It's unclear what that will look like, but that is a typical path that a lot of people in the death doula world think will probably end up happening. Just like with education, there are good and bad things about getting requirements for licensure and certificates. Usually that comes with an education requirement, which again can price people out. A lot of these classes or the programs are not inexpensive, and they don't all have payment plans. So if you're requiring that someone go through a program to get a certificate of completion, you might have a whole group of people who can't afford that. Also, typically when you get something like that and get some regulation, they have continuing education requirements, and that usually comes with a cost too. And it's usually yearly or maybe every couple of years. But again, that might not be something people can afford. And if they don't have an employer who's covering that cost or reimbursing them for continuing education or, exams or licensure fees, they can again get priced out. On the flip side, you have set standardization, so people are meeting best practices that are usually informed by research. And typically, once you create a licensure or certification requirement, you have some kind of oversight board where people can put complaints in. And so it protects patients and clients, because if someone is doing something bad in their practice, they have a way to report that. Whereas right now, depending on the severity of what is happening, if something's going wrong, people may or may not have a recourse. So there's good and bad too if we get some oversight and have to have licensure or certification as death doulas. Right now, the closest thing that we have are micro credentials, like the National End-of-Life Doula Association Proficiency Badge. These micro credentials are created by a group, so in this case by NIDA, and monitored by them. So it's not governed by anyone else. There's, again, no set standard or best practices that are having to be met outside of this group. But at least this way, if someone says, oh, I'm a NIDA proficient doula, you can go to their website and see, okay, well, what does this mean? What have they passed? What does this mean that they know? So it does give you some insight into what things they know and are proficient in, or what topics they might not know about. And that's the closest thing we have right now in the death doula world to any kind of oversight or formal certification. And then we get to what services death doulas offer. And again, it's not an easy answer, because the services are going to be just as unique as the people offering them and the people asking for them. So doula to doula, there's probably areas that they specialize in and services that they won't touch, but generally they're going to include something within like education and guidance, practical and logistical support, emotional and spiritual care and support, and advocacy. I have some slides going over specific services, but there's not a set list that I can provide of, these are services that death doulas provide, because there's such a wide range. And a lot of it is based off of what did they learn in training, if they did that, or mentorship. And then what are their areas of interest, because they might go out and read extra or volunteer in a specific place based off of that interest. In addition to just the wide variety of services, the services are also going to vary based off of the individual. So you could have two people who both have the same kind of cancer coming to the same doula, and they're going to get different services because they're going to have different needs and different values and things that are important to them. And so what the doula does for them will vary. So there's not a set, okay, you have lung cancer, we're going to do this for you, or you're 20 years old, we're doing this. It is all highly individualized based off of everyone's unique circumstances. Some things that people do, or that death doulas do, that are some of the more common services are vigil sitting. This is probably what most people think of when they think of death doulas, even though I don't think that it makes up much of most death doulas practice. But vigil sitting is the act of being present at someone's bedside while they're actively dying. So usually it's a couple days to weeks, depending on how you define actively dying and what's going on with them. And it's not passive. You're not just sitting there just to have a body there. You're trying to lend support to them. Usually people are going to try and involve things that the person loves. So that might be playing music that they love, reading their favorite books, anything like that. You might be doing spiritual readings if that was really important to them. So usually you're doing something to try to engage the person and bring them comfort as they're experiencing those last, days or hours or however long it is. Again, this probably doesn't make up a big portion of what death doulas do, but it's usually what people think about when they think of death doulas. A lot of death doulas also do advanced care planning. So they help people identify what's important to them, what are their values, what are their goals of care if they have like a diagnosis or a serious illness. And they can help them create a comprehensive care plan, kind of like we saw with Alua, talking about funeral and body disposition. Do you want heroic measures, all of that kind of stuff. So they'll help them talk through that and then document it. Some doulas also do legacy projects, which are just projects that you're doing with the goal of leaving behind your wisdom, your advice, your love. This might be writing letters to people. You might write one letter to 50 people, or you might write 50 letters to one person to have them open at specific times throughout their life. Sometimes people make videos, they'll do video letters. They might make photo albums. I've had people do quilts, kind of anything that represents you and your love and support for the people in your life. It can take whatever. I've had people do cookbooks. So a whole range of things can fall under legacy projects. Less common, but still fairly often offered are respite services. So again, non-medical. So the death doulas are not coming in and offering medical support. But a lot of times people don't want to leave their loved one while they're dying. So a doula can come in and maybe do light housekeeping or pick up your grocery order that you ordered from Fry's and you just haven't left the house to go get. Or they can sit with your loved one while you go take a nap and a shower. So it might be something like that. They might also do compassionate closings, which is kind of the nice way of talking about all the bureaucratic stuff that happens. So I had a friend who spent a couple of weeks helping people just call all the places that came, like all the things she got in the mail, like spam stuff and magazines and all of that, to let them know that her mom had died. So, you can have a doula do that for you because it's overwhelming. And while you're grieving, you don't necessarily want to make those calls and keep having to say, hey, my mom died. They can also help you get stuff together to go to the bank and close those accounts, or help you figure out how do you tell the Social Security Administration about it, things like that. So anything logistical, they can help support you and figure out how to do that. And then some doulas focus on specific areas outside of human death. So the most common one that I have seen is companion animal doulas. And this can involve a lot of stuff. Often it involves creating a special last day for a pet, usually a cat or a dog, but I've seen it done with birds and horses. So whoever you consider a companion animal. And then a lot of times it also involves arranging in-home euthanasia and providing support. So if you've ever had to make that call, you know that it can be difficult. I know I had to call my vet twice last year because the first time I tried to leave the voicemail, I was crying too hard. So it would have been great to have someone make that call for me. So sometimes that's all you need the doula to do. But sometimes, if you don't have loved ones, if you've moved away, you just want someone to be with you during the euthanasia process. And so they can provide that support to you. But I've also seen doulas who make whole packages, and you go out and you spend a day, getting your dog hamburgers and taking them to the beach and doing ice cream, and you have a photographer and you get all these beautiful pictures, and you do that, before you schedule the euthanasia. So companion animal doulas can do a lot, and they might specialize again in some portion of that. But these are just examples. Again, not all doulas do these. It's going to really largely depend on training and areas of interest, because some doulas hate animals. You know, they might have had a bad experience with a dog and they would never want a companion animal. So, you know, these are not services everyone will offer, just examples. And if any of those spoke to you, you know, you're like, oh, that would be great. I would love to have, you know, a companion animal doula and have someone be there with me because it was really hard last time. You do have to consider, how are they going to get paid? So right now, or if it's for you, you know, you think, oh, I want to write that into my end of life plan. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. This field is rapidly changing. But right now, doulas are considered an out-of-pocket expense. So I don't know of any third-party reimbursement at this moment. So that means that you or your family would contract directly with the death doula, or their business if they're part of like an organization, rather than with like a hospice or palliative care provider. There are, I have heard of in other states, some hospices that have brought death doulas on as volunteers, but as death doulas. And in that case, you would not be paying the death doula, but also the services that they're able to provide tend to be more restricted. They're predetermined by the hospice and what they've worked out as that arrangement of like, okay, you can do this within the parameters of being a volunteer death doula. So if you were to go on service with a hospice that does that, that would be the rare case where you could have a death doula and not pay them directly, but you also might not be able to pick the services. You know, they might be limited in what they're able to offer you. If you're going with what we call a community doula, which is just a doula who's not affiliated with like a hospice or another business that you would be paying, but just doing it on their own, there's a lot of ways that people accept getting paid. And most doulas I know of try to offer as many different payment options as possible to increase accessibility to services. So they might do a sliding scale where they say, okay, for this service, it can cost between $50 to $300. You tell me what you can pay, and you get to pay within that scale. I don't know of anyone that actually asks for verification of like your income for that. Usually it's like an honor system thing. They'll say, this is the scale, and you tell them what you can pay. They might do hourly fees. Sometimes that might be less expensive. So again, if you just needed someone to call the vet for you, that might be, you know, let's just say, I'm going to pay you for half an hour for you to make this phone call and set up the appointment for me. And then a lot of them will do package options. So you got a diagnosis of, let's say, cancer. So we're going to do, you know, an appointment a month right now. And as it progresses, then we can increase our appointments to once a week. And that'll cost you this lump sum that you can pay over time or all at once. So usually doulas will accept most of those, you know, any combination depending on your situation. And some doulas offer pro bono or volunteer services, meaning that they don't require payment for them. They might do that just like they just do volunteer doulaing. Like if they have a full-time job, or they get enough clients that they're able to do that for lower income clients because they have enough paying clients. So that might be an option, but most doulas are trying to make a living. So I wouldn't bank on that, but usually the sliding scale is how doulas try to increase accessibility. And if there are the lucky ones, they might be able to do some volunteer work. People often ask why, you know, so I say all that, I'm like, okay, you have to pay out of pocket. And now I've like talked myself out of a job, and I've talked all the doulas in Tucson out of a job because people are like, yeah, I'm already paying a lot in my healthcare stuff. So no, thank you. But you still might want to work with a doula, and not everyone needs to, but some people want to. And there's a lot of reasons why they choose to work with a death doula, and they're just as unique as the people themselves. For people who work with a doula before a serious illness or diagnosis, they might do so to become more comfortable with death. So death meditations, like we saw in that video, are a common way that death doulas help people start on the journey of becoming more comfortable, because you don't do a death meditation and magically feel great about talking about it. Or they might just want to do their end of life plan. You know, maybe a loved one got sick or died recently and they say, oh, I should really do this. So they might work with a doula ahead of time. And then, of course, you have the people who have gotten a diagnosis or had a decline in their condition, or, you know, have been told that they have X amount of time before they're expected to die. And so they want a doula to either supplement their medical team or provide services that they aren't receiving. So maybe it's just that, you know, hospice can't provide as much respite care as they're wanting. And so that's what they hire the doula for. Or the hospice doesn't have anyone, you know, they don't have any volunteers or anyone who can help with legacy projects. So they hire the doula to, you know, help them finish up the quilts that they want to make for all their grandkids. So they might be a supplement or providing additional services, again, only non-medical services, but services that the hospice team can't. I don't like, sometimes people say doulas fill in the gaps of hospice. And I feel like that implies that hospice is lacking something. And you could look at it that way, but I think, you know, like most of healthcare, hospices are working with limited resources. And as people use it more and they try to keep up, you know, there might be a lag. So I don't think doulas fill in the holes, because they can't take over any of the services that hospice do, but they can supplement them. And I think that's a better way of thinking about it versus filling in gaps or anything. So it's never like should I do hospice or should I get a death doula? It's, you know, oh, am I on hospice, but my loved ones really need to shower because they smell and hospice can't get anyone out here, and I could hire a death doula to sit with me, or for the legacy projects, or, you know, any of those other things. If you are thinking about, or if you think that you might consider hiring a death doula in the future, some recommendations, because you don't want to just hire Joe Schmo that you found on Facebook necessarily. So I would get clear on what services you're looking for. So again, not all doulas offer all services. So you might find an Instagram and be like, oh, I love that doula, I think she's amazing. You might have found a Lua and been like, so cool, I love her energy. But what if you want a death meditation and this is someone who only does advanced care planning? Well, now you found someone you love, but because you reached out to them before you got clearer on what you wanted, it's not going to be a fit. So get really clear on what services you're looking for. And even more than that, like, why are you doing it? So if you want advanced care planning, that is something you could do on your own. So are you doing it because you need someone to give you a pre-made template? Or are you doing it because you need someone to hold you accountable? Because there are doulas who will just send you a template and that's all you pay for and you don't get any follow-up, which is fine for some people. But there are doulas who will say, okay, let's start off by talking about your values and stuff. Do a meeting on that. I'll send you the template and then I'll follow up with you. And if you need that accountability, well, you might want to go with the second doula, because if you just get sent the template, maybe you won't complete it. So like, get very specific if you can about what services you're looking for the best chance of finding a doula who's going to fit your needs. Along with that, also know what your budget is. It's uncomfortable, especially when we're talking about like end of life stuff and healthcare stuff. But again, a doula is something you're going to be paying for out of your pocket, or your loved ones might pay for you. So to find a doula who's going to be able to do what you need to know how much you can pay. The prices might not be listed on their website. So if you can go into a meeting and say, I am looking for advanced care planning help, and I know that I am going to need accountability. So I can't just be sent the documents with no follow-up, and I can pay $50. They might be able to say, okay, cool, I offer sliding scale, that works for me. Or that doesn't work for me. You know, this is my only job and I charge $175, but I know this doula who does sliding scale. So even if they can't help you, by knowing what services you're looking for and your budget, they can hopefully help or make a better referral for you instead of just saying, no, I can't do that, and leaving you back at square one. And then maybe not the biggest thing, but one of the big things is finding someone you're comfortable with, because unless you come from a family like mine, where we've been talking about death and serious illness forever, because my whole family has worked in the ICU, you probably didn't grow up being comfortable around these conversations. So you might feel vulnerable. You might be in vulnerable positions if you are sick or have a new diagnosis. So just like a therapist or a doctor, you want someone that you're comfortable with, because you're not going to be getting the most out of that relationship if you don't feel like you can be honest in front of them, or cry in front of them, or tell them all of your fears and have them help you work through that. So it's not enough usually to just find someone who offers the service you want. You want to kind of, most people will offer a free 15 or 30-minute consult. Take that, talk to them, find out if you guys get along, or if it's someone that you feel like immediately judged by, that's probably not someone you want to give your hard-earned money to and, give your vulnerable time to. So I really prioritize trying to find someone you feel comfortable with so that you get the most out of the experience. And if you want to learn more, luckily, this is just a small amount of information. I mean, there are tons of news articles on death doulas, but I put some of the groups that are more prominent for either doula training or just as like a doula gathering. And then some of the providers like Going with Grace, Death Doula LA, she is another big one. So if people have ever heard of death doulas, usually they've heard of Alua or Jill. Jill owns Death Doula LA. But these are some of the bigger names in the death doula world. But if you Google what is a death doula info, all sorts of stuff will come up. There was even an article on Goop, which who knew, but I found that while I was double checking stuff for this. So there's lots of information out there. This is just kind of a starting point. It is definitely not the end all be all for information on death doulas. But hopefully if you are looking to learn about either doing a program or finding more about death doulas because you think you might want to hire one, this can provide some information. But otherwise, I don't know what that is. I'm just happy we made it this far before something happened. Otherwise, we're done and we can go to questions before I start drawing more. I don't even know how I did that.
I like it. That's great. Thank you so much, McKenna. And as McKenna said, that we have time now for questions. Maybe if there you go. Oh, and I want to let everybody know that this is recorded and we're going to send it out to folks. So that information page with all the links, you will have that in the recording if you didn't catch it all the first time. So it'll be available. But if you would like to ask a question, just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask away.
I just wanted to make a comment. Thank you for all the wonderful information you've given tonight. I really appreciate that. One of the things with the in Arizona with Voc Rehab, and from my understanding, doulas are not listed in the United States labor statistics. So if someone wants to be a death doula, they qualify for those state services. The state won't pay for them because it's not listed as an occupation that's viable. So I don't know if there's movement towards getting that done or whatever, but I just thought I would bring it to people's attention because that would certainly be a way for people to get trained if that's what they really would like to do and not be discouraged because of cost.
Sure. That's really good to know. I would hope, I don't know if that's something actively being worked on, but I do know that NEDA, the National End of Life Doula Association, has done some work with the National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization and CTAC, just the Coalition to, I can never remember what CTAC stands for.
Coalition to Transform Advanced Care.
There. So I know that they're on a couple, or they're talking to other organizations, or sitting on other organizations. And they do some, they've gone and talked to some senators and congressmen and people. So I would hope that that's something that is in the works, but I don't know. But it's good information to know, because I was not aware of that.
Eileen, did you have a question?
She dropped it in the chat, David.
Oh, did she?
Yeah.
Oh, do you need insurance? So do you need like insurance as a death doula to be able
To practice?
to practice? Yeah.
Legally, yes. And it is at least the trainings I took was that was like the last part. And so, yeah, it's not quite the same. It's along the same lines as insurance that like nurses and nurse practitioners and doctors get. But again, because it's newer, there's only 2 or 3 providers that I've seen that list death doulas specifically. So I think a lot of us go to the same group. So it's not, again, because we're not licensed, so it's a little bit different, but it's kind of a CYA thing. So even though we're not licensed, we're still providing services, and we have contracts with clients. So most programs and most doulas, if you go to there's lots of Facebook pages, will recommend that you get a insurance that covers practicing as a death doula.
That made me think about, did you form like an LLC, or are you just doing this as an individual?
I have an LLC. A lot of doulas will start as like a sole proprietor until they, get a steady amount of clients, or they might say as a sole proprietor for, until they decide. So most doulas are either sole proprietor or an LLC. Some people have come together, like there's one called the Philly Death Doula Collective. And so they have formed a collective under which doulas who are their own individual LLCs come in. So that gets kind of complicated. But most doulas practice on their own and are either a sole proprietor or an LLC. And don't ask me for more information on how that process worked, because I used InkFile, because I don't know how to do legal forms.
And someone was asking just where do they look for insurance? Like, where did you find insurance for your practice?
Gosh, I can never remember the name, so I would have to look it up really quick. But it was at the end of my training, which is another benefit to doing the training. They usually will have a short little bit about business information, like you should have contracts, because what if someone tries to come back and say something, or you don't get paid, or like you're dealing with death. How do you ask for payment? Should you do it before the person dies? And what if you don't? And that's awkward, because now you're asking a grieving family. So they'll go over business basics like that. And both of the courses I took, the Going with Grace and the University of Vermont, recommended a couple of different ones. And I should know because I pay them monthly, but it just comes out of my card. And so I would have to look up their name. But also, again, if you go in like the National End of Life Doula Association and University of Vermont, both have Facebook pages. And if you were to join them and Google like insurance, it's a common thing that people ask. And the names, again, there's only like 2 or 3 companies. So the names are always the same ones that come up when people ask. And I think you could probably even Google death doula insurance and the company would probably come up. But that's how I found out, is it's part of the training, which is another benefit.
Are you aware of any states where death doulas are not allowed?
Yes. Okay, wait, I Googled it real quick. My group is CM and F. That is the group that I do my insurance through. I have not heard of any states where doulas are not allowed. I do know that there is some ongoing legal stuff in California, I believe, about there was a group of doulas that were being sued because people were accusing them of overstepping and getting into funeral director territory. And funeral directors and their work is pretty highly regulated. And the way that court case is playing out has the potential to make California, not that death doulas wouldn't be allowed, but they would also have to get licensed as a funeral director to even practice as a death doula, even if they're not doing funeral director stuff. So that is a possibility in the future, depending on how that court case plays out. But currently, as far as I'm aware, all of the states allow them. There might be, I've heard of some hospitals and hospices pushing back on like not really wanting to let doulas in because they're not familiar with them, or doulas have been trying to like maybe pushing overstepping. But that's more of an organization by organization basis, not a state thing.
Please, Kristen, go right ahead.
If I may make one joke first, and also thank you, Julie, for having the invite out there for all of your college friends. And I am so glad that I joined, and I appreciate all the information. So one joke real quick and then a question. I'm just, Fran, I know you put on there about, is there any states where doulas are not allowed? I'm in New Hampshire. I cohabitate in New Hampshire and Connecticut, and New Hampshire is the live free or die state. So I'm just going to say you probably can, we probably can like have at it in New Hampshire with no problems. Can you explain the difference? There was a slide early on that was talking about palliative care versus hospice care. Are you able to kind of just give me a little bit of a description of if there's a major difference between those two?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably not the expert on that here, but I can give what I tell people. The major differences for most of the people that I work with are like, I think of both of them falling under the umbrella of comfort care. So they're both focused on a lot of the same stuff, and that's improving quality of life. But palliative care you can have at any point in your illness, whereas hospice care requires that diagnosis of or a prognosis of 6 months or less. Although I did just read an article from Hospice News that someone's pushing for it to be a year. So that was interesting. And then when you sign up to hospice care, I always get pushback because some people are like, you can get palliative radiation. Yes, you can, but you stop your curative treatment for the disease, the life-ending disease. You don't necessarily stop all treatments, but palliative care, you can continue on with curative treatment. So some people talk about palliative care as being a bridge to hospice, which can be true, but it's not always. Some people go on palliative care years before they die, and they might go on it and off it, or, you know, you only get it while you're in the hospital, because not all communities have like community palliative care, but they don't have it inpatient. So I don't like the comparing it to a bridge to hospice, because just because you go on palliative care doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to need hospice or want it. But the big differences are you can go on palliative care at any point. Hospice, you have to have that prognosis of 6 months or less. And then palliative care, you can continue the curative treatment, and hospice, you can't. Those are my big differences.
Thank you.
Wow, McKenna, you did great with that answer. That's right on.
Thank
Good
you.
job.
Some of those years of case management paid off.
That's
I
good.
am.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, please.
I'm Kimberly. I just wanted to say thank you to Roots and Roads, and I really wanted to say thank you, McKenna. I'm an end-of-life doula, And I thought I learned a lot. I learned, I learned stuff too. I like hearing from another state, and you trained at a different place for me. But we are, I feel so glad. I'm so glad that this is like being talked about more. And thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, McKenna. We're kind of at time, but we are so grateful for this information, and in a lot of ways beginning the discussion for some folks, and also then adding to it. I'm hoping that we can continue these conversations to learn more, and that people will avail themselves of these services, because we all have our ways of grappling with our own mortality, and death doulas help us all as a community to enter into that conversation in lots of different avenues and ways. And it's a benefit to all of us by having those questions raised. So thank you so much for all of that.
Hey,
tonight.
David, Phyllis has one, looks like she has one
Well,
last.
I just want to say, I don't know if anybody is familiar with the Desert Leaf. It's a monthly Tucson publication. They did last month, they did a huge article on desert doulas, 3 pages. And not desert doulas, end of life doulas. I'm sorry. It's the Desert Leaf end of life doulas. So if anybody's interested in that, it was an excellent article. And it's in last month's edition of the Desert Leaf, if anybody's interested in that.
Awesome. Thanks, Phyllis.
Any other last comments? All right. Jennifer, do you want to pull up the next slides? So we're going to get back together again next month on June 15th. Rabbi Stephanie Aaron from Congregation Havarim is going to be with us to talk about ethical wills. It is something that we've been anticipating for some time, and we're looking forward to that conversation. So please, if you have not registered yet, go on to our website. It just takes about 30 seconds to do that. And then you can take part in it. And like Julie and other folks had said, that if you're not able to make that night and participate, that if you register for it, then we will send you a link to the recording later. And then we normally take a break in July and August, and we will be back for a 2-part series presented by Tani Badi and Paige Hector in September and October. The first part in September, it's entitled Restoring Our Humanity with End-of-Life Decision-Making. It's focused on end-of-life decision-making may have complex physical, emotional, spiritual, and financial impacts for an individual and their caregivers. And this session will talk about strategies that we can use to embrace authentic person-centered care, firmly grounded in the informed choice that reflects the individual's goals and wishes. So please join us for that in September. And then in October, we have things we're longing to know and too afraid to ask. It's demystifying the dying process. And in this session, we're going to talk about, as a person nearing end of life, they may experience the physical, emotional, relational, and spiritual changes. And this session offers clarity around the dying process to relieve unnecessary burden and to support the individual and caregivers to be fully present on their end-of-life journey. So we hope that you can join us for both of those. They're going to be wonderful. And we're also going to have an amazing November session, but I'm not going to tell you what it is right now. You're going to have to come to September, and then you'll get to learn about it. But it's we're really looking to the fall for these amazing sessions.
And just really quick, I wanted to do a little housekeeping because as our new friends from New Hampshire, we are extending our reach to across the country. So we are in Arizona. We are a state that does not participate in daylight savings time. So we are Mountain Standard Time. So the 6 to 7, 7:30 slot is our usual time for Thursday, the third Thursday of every month. We do try to list the times for both Pacific time and Eastern time on our e-blast. So that should be, but if you tend to have to Google it, I just want to make sure you're looking for Mountain Standard Time and not Mountain Time. There's a huge difference. So just wanted to say that for our new friends who might be just joining us. Thanks.
Jennifer.
Yeah.
This is Alan.
What's that?
This is Alan.
Hi, Alan.
I was going to say, sometimes it's listed as Arizona time.
Yes.
Just because we're the exception.
Yeah.
Right.
It should just be Wild West time. Seems
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll jump in and just ask, we would love, if you've never used the QWERTY code, QR code, all you do is get your camera phone and you point it at this little square and it'll pull up our survey. But we so value, as David said at the beginning of our hour together, your ideas, your thoughts for future sessions, as well as what we can do to make, what we've already presented better going forward. So please take a moment if you would, and just let us know how we're doing and what you would like to hear about. Well, thanks so much, everybody. So wonderful to see you, and we hope to see you next month. Enjoy your evening.